Hi, this is David Daughtry at Copperwind Financial with a Dave's Talk for March 2016. One of the things that we have been asked about quite a bit in the last couple of months has been regarding what the impact will be from as far as the markets uh, based on who gets elected in November from a presidential standpoint. And we wanted to address that a little bit here. It comes up every 4 years, but I think this election has been a little bit more divisive and clearly not what people would have thought it would have been a year ago. I think a year ago, people were looking and saying, well, Hillary's going to have a walk in the park here, and nobody's really going to challenge her at all on the Democratic side. On the Republican side, everybody was thinking, oh, it's probably going to be Jeb Bush or someone else that's more on the establishment side. And what we've seen is exactly the opposite. Even though it clearly looks like Hillary will probably get the nomination, Bernie Sanders has clearly hit a nerve, and a lot of people like what they're hearing from him. I think it's mainly even though he's been a career politician, he's looked at as an outsider, where Hillary is looked at as clearly an insider. The same way with Trump. He is looked at as an outsider, and even Ben Carson, who had some early support, surprising early support, and has now sort of faded away. I think a lot of his support came from that he was an outsider. He wasn't a politician. And so a lot of people are looking and saying, what is going to be the impact on the markets based on who gets elected? And I think what we need to do first off is look at what the current composition of Congress is. In the Senate, we've got 54 Republicans, 44 Democrats, and 2 independents. In the House, Republicans are 246, Democrats 188, and I think there's one open seat and no independents. Now, you would look at that and say, well, clearly the Republicans have control, and so if a Trump gets in there, then he's clearly going to be able to do whatever he wants. Well, not so fast, because that's not actually the way it works, especially in the Senate. And other people look and say, well, what happens if Hillary gets in there? Well, then what's going to happen there? Well, let's go back to if a Republican wins and nothing changes in the Senate and the House as far as the composition. You would look and say the Republicans with 54 in the Senate and 246 in the House should be able to pass any law that they want. The problem that the Republicans will have in this situation is the filibuster. And the filibuster basically works in a way that if a bill comes up for a vote in the Senate, you have time for debate, and any senator can start talking, and once he is given the floor, you cannot take the floor away from him unless you have at least 60 votes to stop him from talking. And the problem that you have is somebody like the Democrats in this situation could look and say, we're going to have one of our people start talking, and they're just going to talk and talk and talk, and the only vote you can ultimately pass is a vote to table the issue and never vote on it. Now, this has happened numerous times, and it was designed in the Senate rules so that basically the underdogs, the ones that are in the minority here, have the ability to stop things from just getting railroaded over them. And one of the famous ones was back Strom Thurmond, the Democrat from the South, that he spoke for 24 hours. It was actually against the Civil Rights Acts back in 1957. But that just sort of shows you had filibusters that have been against judicial appointments. You've had people that have talked about their dogs, their cats, their kids, their grandkids. There have been people that have read out of the dictionary for hours at a time, or read the names and telephone numbers out of telephone books. So that is one of the rules-based issues that comes into the Senate. The other thing is if you look and you veto something, if the president vetoes something and you have to override the veto, basically you're not going to have enough votes to do that also. So when you look at it and you say, well, that's where it currently is, well, what would you need? Well, in the Senate, you would need the Democrats to get 16 votes for them to be able to stop any filibuster. And the problem with that is picking up 16 seats when you only have 44. It could happen, but it's very, very unlikely for that to occur. In the House, also because in the Senate only a third, you would have to pick up over half of the seats that are there, and I haven't done the numbers to see because only Senate are 6-year terms, so every 2 years there's only a third of them that are running for re-election. In the House, that's not the case. Everybody runs for re-election every 2 years, but in the House, what you would need is the Republicans to lose about 30 seats, and that's still unlikely given what we're seeing in the races currently. So when we look and say, what's going to be the impact, as we go back and look and say, what's the impact of the election on the U.S. markets? Well, from a pure legal standpoint of what laws could be passed, probably not a lot. I don't think, regardless of whether it's Trump or Hillary or Bernie Sanders or Marco Rubio or Kasich or Cruz, probably from an economic standpoint, at least for the next 2 years until we get to an interim congressional races, I don't think there's much change from an economic standpoint. Not to say there couldn't be dramatic changes with Supreme Court justices, judicial appointments on the appellate courts and the federal courts. Also, a president does have quite an impact. In fact, a lot more impact from the standpoint of foreign policy. He does a lot of interactions and things on the foreign policy standpoint that he can do without congressional approval. So from an economic standpoint and the market standpoint, probably doesn't impact those for the first 2 years. After that, all bets could be off. One of the things that you could see, though, is there is some bipartisan support for some things, especially on the tax side. Some of the tax loopholes, people have talked about backdoor Roths, where you're making too much money to be able to put in a Roth, and so you put it in a non-deductible IRA and then convert. People have talked about closing that down on both sides of the aisle. Instituting required minimum distributions on Roth IRAs so that it doesn't continue to grow tax-free, that you have to take money out just like you do in a pension plan or a 401k or an IRA. The RMDs, the required minimum distributions. That does have some bipartisan support. The carried interest on hedge funds, which is basically allows a manager of a hedge fund, instead of paying ordinary income tax on the money he makes for managing it, since he gets a percentage of the profits, currently they can get long-term capital gains treatment on that. A perfect example, which outrages a lot of people, is Appaloosa Capital Management. David Tepper, one of the largest hedge funds out there, in 2013, he was paid $3 billion. And he paid about a 15% tax rate on it because it was considered long-term capital gains when he was really being paid for managing the money. So there probably will be some tax loopholes that will be closed up. There could be some other things in Medicare, Medicaid, immigration that might get passed. But any large tax increases, changes in tax laws, probably not going to occur. So when we look at it net, probably not a lot that's going to change from an economic standpoint. I'm sure the markets will be up or down, and there may be some dramatic changes in the market, but it won't be due to the presidential election. So anyway, just wanted to give you a quick Dave talks on that to tell you what we're seeing and what we're thinking, because we have been asked this quite a lot in the last couple of months. Hope this helps. If you have any questions, feel free to give us a call, 480-348-2100. Thanks.